What's up, everyone? I'm Coach D. So have you guys been following this stuff about Pete Hegseth and a letter that his mom wrote to him one day? She literally wrote him a letter saying that she had no respect for him because he's a womanizer, he's a cheater, he's a sexual offender, all these things. She wrote that 7 years ago to him. Remember this because this is important. 7 years ago, she basically wrote a letter to her son saying he's a horrible person and she wants nothing to do with him. Well, that letter has obviously been big, and that has been the catalyst in people calling for Pete Hegseth to step down, to just remove himself from consideration to be in Donald Trump's cabinet as the director of the Defense Department. So now, Pete Hegseth, MAGAs, Donald Trump, Fox News has basically forced her to go on to Fox News and talk about this letter and basically defend her son and disavow the letter. But you won't believe what she says during this interview. So first I want to play you some of the things she says. She talks about how, first of all, it's not her fault or her son's fault. It's the media's fault, of course. It's the fake news's fault that this information about her son is out there.
Some of those attachments or descriptions are just not true, especially anymore.
It sounds like you're a little disillusioned. Have you lost trust in how things happen?
No, listen, I came to take on New York City, to take on the New York Times, to be a mother, a strong mother, a fighter.
What's your message to the New York Times?
I would say I don't think the way you operate it feels almost criminal when reporters call you and threaten you. I don't think a lot of people know that's the way they operate. And they are in it for the commission, for the money, and they don't care who they hurt, families, children. And I don't believe that is the right way to do things.
Do you think that's just the way they try to get the story?
Oh, of course, it's their job. But I can take the opposite view.
First of all, it's not criminal. They called you. They asked you for a story about an email you wrote. You wrote the email to your son. You said all the horrible things about your son. They asked you to make a statement on the story before they put out the story. They said to you, hey, do you have anything to say about this email that has come out? And you felt threatened by that. Again, the people who threatened you are probably your son and Donald Trump. And that is why you're on Fox News trying to make up for the email that you wrote. An email she does not at all try to say that she did not write. She is not saying she didn't write this email. She's not even saying that her son is not this person. She even says, judge my son on what he's doing now and not 7 years ago. We're not talking about someone who's 20 years old who did something when they were 13. We're talking about a grown man who was a grown man 7 years ago. And let's be clear here. These things are not just from 7 years ago. There are stories about him smelling like alcohol months ago. There are stories about him getting drunk and blacking out and saying horrible things at office parties, being fired from other jobs within these 7 years she's talking about. But the most telling part of this is not that she's just trying to get away with, basically backtracking on what she said in that email to him. It is that when asked if she would actually testify under oath on behalf of her son, she said this.
But I think it can be overcome. I think people need to listen to him, get to know him, not the Pete from 7 years ago, but the Pete of today.
Right. During the confirmation hearings coming up, if Pete continues with this nomination process, you might be called. Would you testify in front of Congress?
I don't have an answer to that right now, Steve. I hadn't thought about that.
You don't have an answer to that right now? Would you testify on behalf of your son, who you are sitting here trying to defend right now? You wrote an email about him that was horrible, said horrible things about him. Now you're here trying to defend that son against the things you wrote about him. So would you testify under oath on his behalf? I don't have an answer to that. Ask anyone if they would testify on behalf of their child. They would say, absolutely. Absolutely. You're trying to defend him right now, but you can't even guarantee that you would even defend him under oath because, let's be real here, you know Pete Hegseth from 7 years ago is the same Pete Hegseth today. The same guy who threatened you and made you get on television and lie about him. Period.
Don't want no enemies or ops. Envy in their heart, I tell them stop. Vacation on the yacht.